Hi, everyone. Good evening. I am McKenna from Murder by the Book here in Houston, Texas. I have seen many of you this week. This is my fourth event to moderate interview, and it's been a whole lot of fun. You got to see John on Wednesday night, but I think we're capping off a very busy virtual event week tonight with Traci Lambrecht of P J Tracy. I'd like to mention a couple other forthcoming events as you join the audience, the virtual audience, and then I'll bring out Traci in just a second. So we have completed our virtual events for this week, but next week on Tuesday night, John will be interviewing Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child, and we do have signed copies of their latest book. We'll also be back on Thursday with an interesting nonfiction book, Blood, Powder, and Residue, How Crime Labs Translate Evidence into Proof. So for those of you who are crime writers or aspiring writers, you might actually get some good insights there from Beth Betschke. I also want to mention we have a cool new program, our Murder by the Box subscription boxes. We have Cozy Corner, Best of the Month, and Crime Fiction Legends, and those are going out. I think we'll finish sending out all of this month's boxes next week. So if you're interested in that, you can visit murderbythebox.com. If you're interested in ordering a copy of Deep into the Dark, the first in this new series set in LA, I've put a link in there for more information or to order. I guess, last thing, if you have any questions and you're in the YouTube, you're watching YouTube, put them in the live chat. If you're on Facebook, put them in the comments, and we'll get to them a little bit later on. But now is the time to bring in Traci. Hello, Traci.
Hi, McKenna. It's so good to be here with you.
It's such a treat for me to get to see you after so many years. I mean, you know I've been a fan of yours forever, so this is just a delight for me this evening.
Well,
go ahead.
Oh, no, I said it's so fun. And I wish I was there with you in Houston instead of in Minnesota in the wintertime. But, you know.
We did have one of our rare, beautiful days today, so I can't complain about the weather on this end. But let me get you introduced, and then we will start talking about Deep into the Dark.
Wonderful.
P J Tracy is the pseudonym of Traci Lambrecht, best-selling and award-winning author of the Monkeewrench series. Lambrecht and her mother, PJ, wrote 8 novels together as P J Tracy before PJ passed away in 2016. Lambrecht has since continued the Monkeewrench series solo. She spent most of her childhood painting and showing Arabian horses and graduated with a Russian studies major from St. Olaf College in Northfield, Minnesota, where she also studied voice. She now lives outside Minneapolis, and as I said, she's here tonight to talk with us about the first in her new series, Deep into the Dark. So I think I already asked, but how are you?
Well, I'm doing really well. I just finished 2 weeks ago the sequel to Deep into the Dark. Yay, so I'm sort of on a little mini vacation in so much as I ever am. I mean, I have no life when I'm not writing, so I'm kind of wandering around aimlessly, and I'm super happy to be interviewed tonight. Keeps me out of trouble.
Excellent. Well, it's always good to have something on the social calendar right now in the middle of the pandemic. I was asking someone the other day if they'd be willing to moderate, and they responded, "I literally have nothing to do." Yes, I will. I will moderate that event.
Well, that was kind of rude, though. They should say I'd be more than happy to. My schedule is so full, but for you, I'll do it. Well, I've got nothing else to do. Why not?
Exactly. I know it adds some perspective to it. I think that was the first thing he said, or that's what I'm going to pretend, and then explain that it was no trouble because he had nothing to do.
You're right.
So as I've mentioned, and as many of our regular customers know, I've been a fan of the Monkeewrench series forever. Since the first book came out, we were hand selling those books, and I just think that anything you write is fantastic. I am very excited, though, about this new series set in LA, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about this book.
Yeah, well, actually, people may wonder, Monkeewrench was set in Minneapolis, and so why did I take that dive into another world? And the primary reason is that I lived in LA for 10 years, and so it's my adopted home, and I was fully immersed in the culture, and plus it was it's such an amazing place to write about. I mean, a native friend of mine said everything is bigger and crazier than LA, and in LA, and she's absolutely right. And the zeitgeist is so radically different from Minneapolis to LA that I call LA kind of like the evil twin, or the wild alter ego that's like, Minneapolis is, salt of the earth, sensible, very low key, and LA is that, crazy person who's ready to party anytime. So, that was part of it. And I never did, it wasn't a deliberate decision actually to take a break from Monkeewrench. It was more of a compulsion to write about LA, because I had this huge, vast repository of experiences and, adventures, and so I had to write about it. And this book is a crime thriller, and there are actually sort of three main characters. The first being LAPD homicide detective Margaret Nolan, and she's a fun character. She's a little dark. She's cynical, very intelligent, a fantastic cop. But she has a lot of conflict in her life with family and relationship. And her beloved brother, when the book begins, was just killed in combat in Afghanistan six months ago. So, she has her own, personal wounds that she's salving. The second character is Sam Easton, who is also a wounded combat veteran who almost died in an IED explosion in Afghanistan. And he comes back, horribly emotionally and physically scarred, suffering from severe PTSD. And his life is just kind of falling apart around him. And he's just trying to survive. And at a certain point in the book, Sam Easton becomes a murder suspect in one of Maggie's cases. So that was a really interesting dynamic to write about. You kind of see that this tough cynical woman has a lot of soft spots in her, and so that was fun. And the third character is Melody Traeger, who is kind of a secretive, a little bit of a tragic figure. She's a recovering addict, and she's trying to pull her life back together. And she works with Sam, and they kind of seek solace and find kindred spirits within each other. And so this kind of trinity of people just come together with a lot of twists and turns and mayhem and surprises. I surprised myself when I was writing this book, because I wasn't acquainted with the characters. So they were telling me to do stuff like my characters always did, but it was totally unpredictable. So it was very fun. The process was exciting.
So I always ask this question later, but you've already brought me to it, which is, do your characters always take the wheel? It sounds like they do.
They totally do. I mean, I'm on autopilot. I just sit back and let them do the talking. It's just so great to have imaginary friends telling you what to do and what to write. I mean, it's great, and it's very organic, but it's really a dynamic, exciting process, because I can't outline. I mean, let's be upfront about that. I cannot outline, and it's because the characters really drive it, and the setting, and of course the plot. But almost every single night, I'll go to bed thinking I have an idea about what's going to come up next, in the morning. And I'll get up in the morning, and I'll sit in front of my computer and start writing, and suddenly it's going off. So I have never expected. I have no idea where it came from. And so that's kind of, those are the building blocks of a book for me. And, it's kind of funny at the end when, I feel like this insane knitter, and I've got 40 needles and like all these strings, and I'm trying to pull them together and thinking, what did I do to myself back in chapter 5, 7, 10, 14, 28?
Well, I'm not saying this because I'm interviewing you tonight or with any ambition towards selling books. I genuinely have said this comment about your books for years, and your editor, who's a good friend of mine, can back me up with this claim. I think that the biggest strength of your books are the characters. In the Monkeewrench books, you got me to care about someone who wore yellow spandex head to toe. And like, so I'm going to just tell you, I am a superficial enough person that I would not care about the yellow spandex guy in real life had you not done such a good job, you know, making these characters whole and people that you care about and well-rounded and flawed and human. So, you know, and anything you write, your strength are the characters. And it's so interesting to me talking with you that they just literally are imaginary friends in your head. And I think that must be the magic to it. Like, you get them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much, McKenna. That is so nice of you to say, and it really, you know, it hits me right here because for me, I mean, I always say the holy trinity of a novel is plot, character, setting, and they're all, you know, they're all equally important, and they all have to be developed, and they have to come together and in a perfect confluence in order to make the novel work. But to me, the foundation, the very foundation is they're the characters, because you can have a great plot, but if you have characters that are, you know, flat, or you don't care about them, you don't care about the great plot. You know, I always said it's like when I read a great plot with bad characters, I feel like Santa left me a chunk of coal with profanity scrawled across it in my stocking on Christmas morning. And so it's super important. I mean, the characters are really the synergy of the entire book. They interact with the setting, they interact with the plot, and they really drive it. And they just, you know, human beings are complex. They're not caricatures. And you need to imbue, you know, that realism into your characters. And I always tell people when I'm talking about writing, it's like, and don't stop at your major players, you know, at the A cast, the A team. Don't, you know, if one character shows up one time in the book, give them love. They deserve it. They're there for a reason. And, you know, if you don't, you're just squandering this great opportunity to add texture and depth. So thank you very much. That's really, characters are number one for me.
Well, you can tell. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit, and if it's hard, I apologize, but I know that you wrote with your mother, obviously, for a long time. How has it been writing by yourself on this book? Did you just the process obviously has to be different, but how did you go about that?
Well, I'll tell you, it like everything in life, it was a journey. And after PJ passed away, you know, I mean, she was my soulmate, my collaborator, my best friend. And, you know, losing her was just, you know, I mean, obviously it was devastating. And I had to decide what to do. And I think at that point, Monkeewrench, you know, writing is my enduring tether to her. And it always will be. But at that point, it was like Monkeewrench. That was ours, our baby, our conception, you know, our body of work. And so it brought her closer to me. And I knew that I had to write another Monkeewrench novel. And doing so was, you know, it gave me solace, you know, and it was very cathartic. And she was always there with me. So, you know, that was part of the grieving process. And in fact, it was really crazy. And we'll get this, McKenna. I began writing The Guilty Dead 2 weeks after she passed, not having any idea where I was going or what I was doing, or if I would even continue. And I finished the first draft in 5 months. That never, ever happens, and it never will. But it was almost like, you know, I was so driven, and I'm sure her spirit was, you know, there with me, driving me. And then Ice Cold Heart was almost as effortless. But as I was getting to the end, this thing that brought me so close to PJ kind of made me feel like it was taking me further away from her, only in that it began to feel lonely. You know, I mean, the characters were, you know, they're like family to me, obviously. But, you know, that counterpoint and the back and forth and sitting at the desk, it just started to feel like, you know, it was time to turn a corner and write about something that was mine personally. And that was LA and my experiences in LA. And, you know, I really think it came at a great time because by the time I started writing Deep to the Dark, I had been away from LA for several years, and I think that's actually really important. They always say that the mirror of exile can be very intense, and I think it took some time to really process those experiences and think about them, and then write about them, coherently. And yeah, so it was just interesting, and the process with this book. It's weird. I mean, talk about ambiguous, but it was the same, but it was totally different because I was finally alone with my own thoughts, creating my own characters. And I have to say that as much as PJ and I, while writing Monkeewrench, never really knew what was going to happen, in these two books, it was even more pronounced. I had no idea. I mean, literally like 3 months before I finished the sequel, I'm like, what have I done? Where am I going with this? Which is kind of scary. But I thought it ended up, perfectly and wrapped up well. And Deep into the Dark was very much. So, as a writer, we're always evolving and we're always refining, and circumstances in our life transform our lives and our hearts and our minds and our creative yearnings. So this is my solitary journey alone, but at least I have new imaginary friends.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that story about your mom is wonderful. It sounds so natural and real, and it seems like the proper journey to go on with continuing the books. And it sounds like it came to a point where it was time to turn a corner and write about LA and write on your own. But it's interesting to me because the tone on this book is pretty different.
It is.
Were you, in your partnership with your mom before, were you always wanting to write something darker, or did you were kind of together with the tone on the Monkeewrench books, and then this one it's a different tone?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing about the Monkeewrench is that you've met PJ and you've seen us together. She was hysterical. I mean, she was so funny. And although the Monkeewrench books are very dark, there's levity that's brought to the books with the characters. And there are certainly some people struggling with their own personal demons, but not all of the characters are. And so it was really hard to write something totally dark with PJ. I mean, and that was something that we agreed on. We had cast the die and we couldn't deviate because it would be insincere and it'd be weird, if something got dark. But we both had kind of dark sides, and I think possibly the Monkeewrench books did get a little more introspective, a little more dark when we realized that she was ill. She had congestive heart failure, so it's a long and slow, terrible process. And then I after she passed, I think my writing became more emotional. And just because I've changed, I just kind of felt like I wanted to tap into that dark side. And it's not horribly dark, deep into the dark. Yeah, like the title. There are those moments, and there's lightness and stuff. But I think maybe the big difference is that every single character, with very few exceptions, has got secrets that you don't know about, and they've all got wounds.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I don't want people to think, oh, I don't like dark books, I'm not going to try this one, because there are so many moments reading this where you turn a phrase that's laugh out loud funny. And even in a dark scene, like your writing does, you as a person obviously are bubbly and vivacious, and that comes through in your writing, but the tone and the fact that people are struggling with their past in this book, it is darker than the Monkeewrench books, but it's a great thriller and it's enjoyable all the way through. So don't listen to this interview and think, oh, I don't want a downer. Like it's a great read. You'll love it.
Yeah, it's not dark and it's not depressing. And I mean, I think it's always really important to have a really rewarding resolution and a good and hope. There's redemption, there's hope. It's not just black.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to take a housekeeping break real quick and just remind everyone that if they tuned in late, once this video is done and not live anymore, you can watch from the beginning on Facebook or on YouTube. It takes YouTube a couple hours to process it Also, there's no such thing as a dumb question. I know that there are lots of you watching. If you have any questions, nothing would make neither me nor Tracy happier than to get some questions. So pop them in there and we will get to them in a little bit. Okay, so back to your writing style. You already answered the obvious plotter pantser question. You don't outline, you just write.
Right.
But, but your books are very well paced. Do you have a word goal every day or a chapter goal? And then how do you keep that momentum going? Because inherently in the writing process, there has to be slower days than others.
Right. Well, yeah, I have. Oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I have no goals ever. No word goals. I can't. It's like I cannot write a word for 2 weeks, or I can write 20 pages in one day. It depends. I mean, it's hard for me. I've always been like this, but an absolute perfectionist. And so the one sentence has to be perfect before I move on. I don't kind of block things out. I used to. I don't anymore. So, I mean, it takes a lot of time in the front end. At the back end, it's great because you turn it in. There's not much editing to do. But as far as pacing goes, I've always been a big movie buff. And PJ and I both did a lot of screenwriting in the 90s. And so I really think of a novel as a movie. Now, in a script, you have a minute a page, so you only have 120 pages. But, in a book, obviously, you have more and you have this great depth. But I try to think of it as a movie. So every chapter to me, every vignette, every scene is actually a scene from the movie. And I think that really helps me keep up the pace and not get bogged down in, word writing or anything like that. Everything is really balanced, but I think, when you're doing thrillers, pacing is just, it's absolutely crucial. It's a screenwriter friend of mine once said, it's like the number one canon of screenwriting is you want to make sure by the time they get to the bottom of the page, they want to turn it. Because when you have script readers, if they read the first page and they don't turn to the second one, they throw it in the trash. They don't read them if they, so that's always the back of mind.
Yeah. But you do it in a way that it's not artificial or just created to make the page turn. You don't have these silly hooks at the end of the chapters that make no sense. Like, it's done in a way that you actually, I think that has to do with your character building. You care about the characters and what's going to happen to them next, so you keep those pages turning. It's great. So speaking about the characters, you do have 3 main characters in this book. How did you decide who was the main star?
Well, I don't know if I ever did decide. I mean, what I can say is that this book began with Sam Easton, and he was in my head, and I know people who have PTSD, and in conversations with them, I just realized it's like, wow, sometimes the battle after the battle is the one that's most difficult, and they're hailed as heroes, and they truly are. But it's almost like they come back home, they're a little bit unseen. And I was seeing this courage and bravery of people struggling with things, on a day-to-day basis. And I just, that was something that I wanted to kind of highlight and, shine a light on in a way. So Sam was number 1, and we're in his head a lot. And, it's dark and it's funny, and, it was really exciting for me to write. And then I knew, writing crime, obviously there has to be cop. So Margaret Nolan was next. Melody kind of came with Sam. One of the first chapters that I wrote was Melody on the sofa in the morning, on his sofa. And she was like nothing really. I kind of knew where I was going with her, but their relationship together kind of developed as I wrote them.
Yeah. Is the next book, who is the Bill's main character in the next book?
Well, I think that, this next book is more Margaret Nolan's book, and Remy Boudreau, her maybe love interest, is also in there, and of course her partner Al Crawford. But Sam is very much part of it too, and actually too, completely separate incidents in Maggie's and Sam's lives and Remy's life all kind of come together at a point in the book. And so they're working together, and you have the conflict, the tension between Remy and Margaret, and then is Sam a player in that? And so it was fun. And I also got to use my very expensive college education and my Russian degree. There's some Russian elements. It was fun to write.
Oh, yay. Well, you do like a good ensemble cast, so.
Right, exactly.
Great. So about writing and your reading, so what did you read in your formative years? And did you always know you wanted to write?
I always did. And I read everything. I mean, PJ was, whole family, voracious readers. So anything I could get my hands on. I mean, I remember I read like every book in my 4th grade library that I was allowed to at this school. They had older books, from older kids that little kids, 4th graders could go into. And I went to the librarian and I'm like, I've read every book. And she gave me a special pass to read the adult books. Nice. So I read literally everything. I was 11 years old when I read The Shining. So, and you know what? It scared me a little bit, but it was like exhilarating for me. And so really, I do read everything, and part of that, how PJ and I began writing together really, I say, started when I was about 4 or 5 years old, and it was, or 3 or 2, a bedtime story hour is a big deal for us, but we'd run out of books inevitably. So PJ had this great idea to say, let's write our own stories. And so she would say one sentence, and then I'd rip off that, and maybe we have 4 or 5 little stories. Then we act them out with my stuffed animals, Lammy and Teddy, which are sitting on my desk, very threadbare by now. They have no eyes, no whiskers, nothing. And that was sort of, that was how it went. And I'm an only child, and I was creative. I loved art. But my favorite thing was going out in the yard in the summer and walking around and telling myself a story. And then I would come in and sit in our den with this old Olivetti manual typewriter and like my little fingers, and I would hunt and peck and write my stories. And so, it was just kind of natural progression. PJ published her first short story in the Saturday Evening Post in the 70s. So I was, always immersed in that. And so I always did know I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to be a ballerina. I wanted to be a spy. And at one point I wanted to be a nuclear physicist, but then I realized math was involved. So I dropped that ambition right away. But yeah, it's in, I think that, anybody can teach themselves the craft of writing, but I think being a writer is something that maybe you're born with, or it's the way your mind's wired, like crazy. It's just, you have to be a little bit crazy, a little bit, just a little bit.
I will say that I have talked with authors all week, and you win best story for the bedtime story writing their story. That's adorable.
Well, it was so much fun. And, knowing PJ as you do, she was hysterical. So there would always be something, I remember, it's a calm story, there's a farmer in a field, a mouse, or a barn, or a horse, or whatever, just really kid stuff. And then she'd throw in something, and she'd just like explode, like she was on the stage, like the greatest actress. And suddenly Lammy and Teddy are fighting with each other. And then Lammy takes Teddy and throws him across the room. And I remember just weeping with laughter. I couldn't stop because it was so funny, because it was like totally unexpected. And, it was just, and that kind of spontaneity was, was really a hallmark of our relationship. And I think, very definitely, is conveyed in the books. Both, she and I wrote together, and then the newer work I'm doing now. So,
absolutely. I will say you saw Maisie, my mom, before this started. She is quiet now, but her favorite toy is named Lammy. So I have AirPods on, because if she heard you saying that, I'm not going to say it anymore. I've already moved that little lamb so many times because she has ripped it to pieces, but it's her favorite. Anyway, back to your books. We do have a question I'm going to get to really quickly, and then I'll continue with my questions. So, Mystery Knitter, I think that's maybe not a real name. LAPD-based mysteries. I wanted to know about your research to evoke realism.
Oh gosh, well, good question, Mystery. Research is one of my absolute favorite parts of writing any book, and so I really immerse myself in whatever I'm writing about. Ideally I write about something I already know a lot about, like Russia and Russian culture, as I did this last book. But as you know, the Monkeewrench is populated by a group of cyber geniuses and misfits. And I was fortunate enough that my father was like one of the original computer geeks. He started working for Sperry Univac at the time as a software architect and programmer in the 70s. So he was back in the day when computers were the size of rooms, and so he was quite brilliant, and I had so many friends in that world. And he knew hackers, white hat hackers. So I had all that research, all the resources for that. And, LA, living there, being in the entertainment and music and movie biz in LA via my boyfriend, kind of was all the research I needed for like the setting, and some of the characters that show up are seriously based on people I know. And, as far as, I just really feel like if you're going to bring up something, you need to be totally, you have to be an authority on it. And so, it's just something I love to do. And back in the day, I'd spend days and days and months in libraries with PJ doing research. It's easier online, but I really prefer to get my, I'll do all the reading up I need to, but I prefer to actually go to the source. So if I'm writing about a cop or a detective or a homicide, I knew a homicide detective in LA, and the guy who was on the, captain of SWAT. And so I want to go to the real people, on the ground doing these jobs, or who have a specialty in the areas I'm writing about, just so it, is authentic. And, I want to have that authority in my voice when I write. But I do make stuff up too.
So, I don't know if Mystery is a male or female, but they also clarified about the war vet too. That must be hard. And did you speak with war vets as well?
Yes, yeah, I did, definitely. I have a couple friends who are, and family members who are in combat in Vietnam and did 2 tours. And there's some military in my family, friends, acquaintance, and they hooked me up with friends. It's a really hard thing to talk to people about PTSD because it's so painful and it's so private and it's so personal. And people have to get to a certain point in their recovery in order to be able to speak about it, but they can then speak about what it was like in the beginning. And that's kind of where Sam is at, kind of a 2-year point where he's, pivoting one way or the other, and you kind of don't know which way he's going to go. And so, but yeah, I was fortunate, and, I'm so grateful that they did share their experiences. And it was super important for me to make Sam a believable character and write him with compassion.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Mystery, I see your response. Female and a knitter. Okay, if you have more questions, I'll say she. But
okay.
Yeah, great. So I have a question. Do you have a favorite motive to write about?
A favorite motive? A murder motive?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think a lot of the Monkeewrench novels are kind of vigilante based, and I love that. So I think that's really, really my favorite motive. But there are only a few motives, right, for murder, and so I always try to kind of mix it up and throw in these curveballs because it's like it's money, it's revenge, it's crime of passion, whatever. But the murders, I think I really strive to portray them so they're just not like they seem. Like, for instance, in Deep Into the Dark, in the beginning, there is a serial killer, but it's not a book about a serial killer. And you wonder, it's like, so how does this serial killer fit in? Well, he does, but you don't find out till the end. So I like those twists.
Yeah, I would say that your books always have an unpredictable element. So that makes sense that you do that for sure. Okay, so a little bit of an oddball question, but I feel like every author has answers to this. So I'm trying it out on you because I know you're going to be a good sport. What is one of the biggest compliments you've received from a fan, and what is one of the dumbest things you've received from a fan or not a fan?
You mean, oh yeah, right. Like the horse head in my bed, like that.
Yeah. No, like a letter. What have they said? What stupid things have you gotten, and what do you consider highest praise?
I think the highest praise was a letter from this woman who had she had experienced abuse, a domestic abuse in her relationship, and she had finally gotten out of it. And she had just read Snowblind, and she wrote this really beautiful, touching letter that made PJ and I cry, because she was like, you said what's been in my head, and I feel like you gave me the strength, to do the right thing and all that stuff. And at that point you realize that as a writer, you touch people. You have the ability to touch people, and PJ, I never forgot that. And it was always part of a goal that we're entertainers above all, but we do have the ability to maybe, talk about something that people can't, explain a point of view that maybe they have difficulty doing. And it's just that little thing that you throw in, I think, that, humanizes the characters even more, but it's just so important. And that was by far, the most moving. It's like, wow, something we wrote for entertainment, actually, she said that we changed your life. And that was a really, really big deal. Yeah. And as far as, I'm trying to think of anything, God, I feel like I'm letting you down, McKenna. I can't think of anything weird or bad or silly that anyone said.
That's great. That's wonderful. I have spoken to several authors who have like a laundry list of things that people have sent to them that they think are funny, or some authors have come in the store in the past, and part of their talk is like, self-deprecating letters. They'll read them. So I didn't know if you maybe had one, but no problem. You know what? Your best fan letter more than covered that answer.
Okay. Thank you. I passed my test.
That's terrific. So obviously you are a big reader and have been reading forever. Have you read anything recently that was a nice escape from the pandemic?
Yes, I did. For the first time in my life this summer, I read Jane Eyre. I had never read it before, and I loved it because I can't read in a genre when I'm writing. So I need an escape. And so I'll read, historicals. I read Mutiny on the Bounty and The Winds of War and things like that to escape. But, I was embarrassed to say I had never read Jane Eyre, but I picked it up, and it was awesome. I loved it. I'm going to reread it. It was great.
I haven't read it since it was required reading, so I should definitely take it back up as non-required reading, because, that always gives you a very different experience than when you're, writing a report on it.
Oh, totally. Oh, and as we get older, we're seeing it. Our perspective is totally different than when we were in high school. And it was just really beautiful. It was so fun. It was like eating bonbons. It was great. So do read it. It was really good. The Winds of War I read when I was a teenager, and I remember really liking it. But this time, with being educated, knowing more about the war and the politics of the war and stuff, totally fascinating. I mean, I think it's like 800 pages. I read it in like a week.
Wow. I'm going to leave that one to you. That doesn't sound like my cup of tea.
Yeah, I told you I read anything. I read cookbooks for fun.
Oh, there are a couple cookbooks I read for fun too. I will get on board with that. But the other one doesn't sound. When you look at a book that long, I think I can read 3 in this time, and then I just wind up putting it down. It's probably not the right response, but given that I read for business, also like I find them so daunting that I can advocate for 3 other authors if I pick this one up. So
that's exactly right. I mean, you're in a different position too, having to read your job all the time and stuff, but definitely.
So you mentioned having done a lot of screenwriting. Do you write for TV at all anymore, or are there any plans for TV or movies tied into this or the Monkeewrench series?
Oh my gosh, McKenna, I have so much good news for you. And it's actually very recent good news. And I can't totally say everything because stuff is still hush-hush. But I will tell you, number one, there is a tremendous amount of film interest in Deep Into the Dark. And I now have a film agent in LA, a big one. So that's super exciting. The other thing is that Monkeewrench, I optioned with a producer in January before the pandemic, and I co-wrote the pilot with an LA screenwriter, which was a blast. It was so much fun, and the whole project and the package turned out great, and we were so excited to shop it. Then COVID hit and Hollywood shut down. Well, it's just started to open up now. So the Monkeewrench, the whole package is being shopped starting in February in LA, and we think it's going to get picked up for TV or streaming.
That's fantastic. That's
super exciting. And then the other exciting thing is that, and I have a good story about this too. The Christmas novella that PJ and I wrote, Return of the Magi. Well, it wasn't a novella at first. It was a screenplay that we wrote, and it was optioned many times, and actually was a finalist in a big film festival in the late 90s. But Hollywood's Hollywood. Stuff just doesn't happen always. Well, as it turns out, about a year ago, also, it was picked up by a big animation studio. And it's now in pre-production for a full-length animation, which is so
beautiful.
I know. I mean, it's just so exciting for me. And the thing about Magi that I'll tell you that makes it even more exciting for me. That was probably the favorite story that PJ and I ever wrote. It's heartwarming. It's dark, it's funny, it's filled with redemption and love and friendship and everything. It was the whole package. It kind of encapsulates what PJ and I were as writers. And so it was our baby, and it was our dream, and especially PJ's, to have it see the light of day in some form. And knowing that she probably was not going to live long enough for Hollywood to get off her butt and make the movie, she was getting ill, and I knew that was a dream of hers. So I would go to her house and write with her all day on the Monkeewrench, and then I would secretly come home at night and work half the night at my house on novelizing our script. And then so I finally finished it and brought it to PJ, and she was just over the moon and happy and just crying, and we were crying together, and it was such a beautiful moment. And then you can't make this up. The morning PJ died, I got on my computer before I went over there and picked up my email, and there was an email from my UK publisher telling me they were going to publish Magi as a novella. So I went to PJ's, and I was able to tell her before she died that day that Magi was finally going to see the light of day. So, it's doubly special for me.
That's amazing. And now, even better news, that I'm sure she's watching from afar. That's incredible.
Yeah, she's drinking a lot of champagne, I know.
There you go. Okay, I guess last question, because unless those of you who are watching have something else to add, I see that I have gotten a comment that Windsor is wonderful and I should try it. So
Oh, good.
there we go. You have backup from the audience.
Well, you know what? It's very character driven.
Excellent. Well, I like characters.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So my last question also has to do with books. If you were stranded on a desert island, what 3 books would you take with you?
Oh my gosh, that's so hard.
I'm sorry.
I feel like I want to take an entire library with me, but I know that's not possible. So let me think about this for just a minute. Well, it's not going to be my Russian English dictionaries for sure. Not that. Not going to be the Brothers Karamazov, which I also reread this summer. Gosh, I think it actually would be The Shining. I love that book. I love that book so much. Obviously warped my mind as an 11-year-old when I was reading that in some way. God, isn't that weird? I'm so bad with book titles and book names. But I love Anna Karenina, and that's a ponderous tome. But I just absolutely adore that book. I love it so much. And then I think Nelson DeMille's Upcountry about his experiences in Vietnam was great, and I think I probably read it 8 times, but I could read it 8 more. So that's off the top of my head. I'm probably omitting like my all-time favorite 3, but those are really great ones that would keep me occupied.
Listen, we have customers in all the time who ask me what's your favorite book in the store, and it changes daily. So
Good. I'm not alone then.
Whatever way the wind's blowing is what my answer is, and I'm sure if I asked you tomorrow, you probably have 10 other choices. But we're going to last night tonight. It was a nice varied grouping. Makes sense. It's great. Listen, Tracy, it has been an absolute delight talking with you tonight.
Oh, you too, my friend. It's so much fun. I loved it.
Yeah, me too. So once again, I highly recommend Deep Into the Dark. I'm so excited that number 2 is coming. If you haven't read P J Tracy, if you haven't read the Monkeewrench books, please, we stock them all the time. We highly recommend them. Consider ordering a copy of Deep Into the Dark. You will not regret it. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in. We will not have another virtual event for a few days. It won't be until Tuesday. You're not going to get us nightly again for the next few days. But we hope to see you again soon. Everyone stay safe and have a wonderful evening. Good night, Tracy.
Good night. Hugs to you.
Hugs to you.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.